coming to spend time with the Korea team. And first let me say another congratulations for your January performance. An incredible result. I remember a time when Korea and ANZ used to compete in terms of a revenue, very close, but Korea very quickly doubling the ANZ business, and I have no doubt it's because of the effort every single one of you put in, because I can see how well spread the performance is as well. So very big congratulations to all of you, and thank you very much for your efforts. Very much appreciated. So as Jade kindly pointed out, we're going to talk about our Ranger drug-coated balloon. It's a very exciting technology for us, the Ranger drug-coated balloon. I think Alluvia is an awesome product, a fantastic product, but I think we would all agree here that right now the big volume product for SFA treatment right now is drug-coated balloons. Right now that seems to be the future, and I think in Korea with the appetite for atherectomy here as well, very important to have a drug-coated balloon in the mix for you guys. And I think when that comes in, what that will allow you to do is really build those proper relationships with that top tier of customers that will help you kind of permeate the rest of the market. Okay, just before I get started on the on this algorithm, today we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, right? Like we always do in these trainings, we try and cram a whole lot of stuff into a short space of time. Okay, so really what we're going to go through today are just some concepts, but it really is going to be up to you to take the time afterwards to get up to speed on Ranger. Okay, use your time to study the product, because it'll be you and your knowledge that will help convert it over from a competitor. And one day training from me isn't going to do that. You really do need to make a sort of commitment to your own self-study. Okay, to be the best kind of professional you can be, make a commitment. To help you put this information into context, the way that I kind of try and break up all the information and hold on to it so that I can speak about it with credibility and confidence to a physician, is that I basically put it into 4 areas. Some of you might have seen me say this before, but I start every training with this now. And this is just something that I've kind of self-developed to help me remember this stuff, and I think it puts you in a good position when you're talking to your doctors, because you're talking about the right thing first. So this is a well-known concept in marketing, the 4 Ps, but it's not the same 4 Ps. It's a different 4 Ps. Okay, so what do we think the top one's going to be? What's the most important P when we're talking to doctors, or when we do our job? What are we mostly doing our job for? Patients, right? So some of the information today is going to be particularly relevant to patients, right? And I will try and remember to say, hey, this is when you're talking to your physician about patients. Okay? For us, the next important person is going to be the physician, right? That's number 2, right? Priority for us, because they're our customers. That's who pay our bills, really, when we have a good relationship with them, right? We'll look after this one, number 1. We'll look after this one, number 2, right? And then we're on good ethical ground. We're on good moral ground, and we're doing what we're supposed to do. The next one, right, which is really important these days, is about money, isn't it? We hear about this all the time. Budgets constrained, all that sort of thing. So the next person we need to look after is the payer. Who's paying the bill, right? And you need to think about this when you're doing your plans, because quite often we know all about the information for this, we know all about the information for them, right? And then we skip down to the last one, which is going to be product, without thinking about, oh, they haven't got the budget to quite pay for that, right? So this one is important, and as a sales rep, as a complete territory manager, you should be learning how to deal with these guys properly, right? And then the last one is product. Okay, now you need to know this one to help all of these, right? That's why we're doing our product training today. But when we go to a doctor out of this training, we don't go and start talking about that. We still go into the doctor and start here. What kind of patients are you seeing? What is your goal with those patients? What are you trying to achieve with them? Okay, and that's how this information will stick in your mind. Okay, and I use this every time I go and see a doctor now. I think, okay, I'm going to talk about patients, or I'm going to talk about the physician. And then once you've kind of exhausted this, then you can move on to this, right? And this may never come up, but in some countries, this and this are the same thing, right? But as long as you start there with the patient. So that's just basically a kind of a method I use to remember all this information. I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but it just helps you put the information in context and priority. Okay, so let's talk about the SFA algorithm, and I do want to discuss this algorithm. I don't want to just put it up and say this is the way that it should be done. Okay, you've probably seen the algorithm from Nicholas Shamas, the US physician. This is very closely related to his algorithm, but I've also consulted doctors like Professor Andrew Holden. So I've had his feedback on this algorithm as well, and he didn't really change much other than to say that this residual stenosis part here at less than 10%, he would accept anything less than 30%. So anything 30% less residual stenosis, he would accept that as a relatively successful outcome. That would give him enough flow generally. So you've all had a little bit of time to have a look at that. Does anyone want to ask any questions about this? Does everyone feel comfortable that that's about the way that most physicians would treat in Korea? Does anyone want to challenge it and say, well, I don't think that's...
How about we recommend the long lesion above the 10 cm?
So this one's less than 10 centimetres, and so all, in-stent restenosis is a bit different, but by proxy that makes all of these ones here generally longer than 10 centimetres.
But nowadays our physician wanted to use the long DCB for the long patient.
Yeah. So I think that's still true, because that still allows for that. Still allows for that in the algorithm. So you would come down, if you've got a long a long lesion, then there's a good chance that it's going to fall into that task C, task D, long occlusion classification of PAD. And they can still start, but you have to do something about that long lesion before you put a drug-coated balloon in it. Okay, and that might be some sort of plaque modification or debulking, but you really do have to get some sort of satisfactory recanalization before considering going over to a drug-coated balloon. Okay, there's another technology actually that requires that, which is Supera, right? You can't just put a Supera in a substandard lesion. But there are other technologies that you can, if you can't quite get a nice recanalization, then what's a technology that we have that we can put in? What can you put in if you can't get a really good, let's say you end up with 40 or 50% residual stenosis. What then? What do we do then? If I've got an SFA lesion and I have 50% residual stenosis after I've ballooned it, or jet stream, what could I do then? What product do you have that we could put in then? What stent? Alluvia, right? Yeah. So, see this here? That's what that means, the no means, right? You didn't get a satisfactory result, then generally, right now, the accepted algorithm, if you don't get a satisfactory recanalization result, is to go for a stent. The reason for that is that these task C and D lesions often have symptoms that need to be dealt with acutely. And what sort of disease am I talking about there? CLI, critical limb ischemia, right? So that's the big thing we need to understand today, is that a drug-coated balloon isn't going to give you the immediate recanalization result you want. It's no better than a plain balloon for an acute result. Okay, the paclitaxel coated balloon is really only about a year, 2 year, 3 year results, right? That's why we're using it, for that end goal years down the track, not for our immediate goal. And if you can't achieve the immediate goal, then you need to look at another technology. And that's why we have Alluvia. Okay? That leaves a big question. How often can you not get a good result? And well, actually, the truth is, quite often. It's more often than you think. Right? But to get a true understanding of that, you really need to be working with the guys that are doing big volume to see that, right? That's the kicker. Any other questions? Any other questions about that?
Just quickly, a little bit off the topic, but is there any clinical trial going on in using DES after DCB dissection? After DCB, using DES after DCB?
Yeah, there's no clinical trial that I know of that that looks at using you said using a drug-eluting stent, like look at using Alluvia after Ranger, for instance. None that I know of. I certainly don't think that's something that we would probably study. What I can tell you is that if you look at the drug-coated balloon data across Impact, Study Levant, the Illuminate, Spectranetics, all of the drug-coated balloon trials, generally you'll see a bailout stent rate. Yeah? Okay, and you can look, you know, some of them will give you that kind of cohort information on what the TLR, freedom from TLR rate or primary patency rate is on the bailout stent group. It generally is a little bit higher, to be honest with you. Okay, so scaffolding the lesion a little bit does tend towards the studies that have high bailout stent rates, the drug-coated balloon studies that have high bailout stent rates tend to do a little better, right, in the longer term, tend to do a little better. And it is something, it's one of the reasons why you can't just easily compare drug-coated balloon studies, because they don't cap the bailout stent rate. You know, they have to do something if there's a flow limiting dissection. They can't just leave it. So, yeah, it's an interesting and a good point. Yeah, there is a study called the DBAS trial. So DEBAS, that was conducted in Perth, and that is a trial of drug-eluting stent versus drug-coated balloon and bare metal stent spot stenting. And yeah, that has pretty good results. It's a Biotronic-sponsored trial using Biotronic stuff, I think, against Zilver. But yeah, it's a relatively small study, pretty local, sort of Australian study. Hasn't got sort of big international notoriety, but yeah, there is evidence that exists for that. Can I ask why you asked the question about drug-eluting stent and drug-coated balloon? Is that something that physicians have asked about?
Actually, I found out these preclinical trials used DES after DCB, and the data showed no toxicity or nothing to lose after DCB.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the business for the patients, I think it will work well after DCB.
Yeah, it is a good question, because if you put a stent in, what's one of the issues we have if we put a stent in an SFA lesion? What, a bare metal stent, what's one of the problems we have? If we put a stent in, like a Nova, so we balloon and a Nova stent, what's one of the issues we have? ISR, right? So drug-coated balloons aren't necessarily tuned for in-stent restenosis, okay? Because the pattern of in-stent restenosis for stenting is a long way out. If you look at the 12-month results for bare metal stenting, they're actually not bad. You know, they're sort of marginally better with drug-eluting stents. At 2 years that starts. So that tells you that probably the in-stent restenosis cascade is quite a long, sort of late catch-up complication. Drug-coated balloons aren't necessarily tuned for that, right? They're more tuned for a de novo, you know, type of setup. But yeah, there's no science for that, so it's a good question. No doubt one that'll have to be answered in the future. Yeah, can't really see any downside at this point. Yeah.
So what about the price in Australia? So between DS and PMS, what is the price?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the public system, a 6 French bare metal stent and a drug-coated balloon are about the same. Reimbursement, they're quite different, but nobody cares about it because private health insurance is paying. But in a public system, yeah, they're about the same. A drug-eluting stent is quite a bit more. Yeah, quite a bit more.
Because in Korea, PMS and DS is just almost, you know, same price.
Okay.
Less than 10%? Just 10%? 20%?
There's a 20% delta between a drug-eluting stent and a bare metal stent.
Total price, but the reimbursed price is okay for...
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's, yeah. And drug-coated balloon price?
Just half of DS, half of DS.
Half of DS. Okay, okay, good to know.
And for your information, the reason Jade asked you this question is that in Korea, there is single payer, government pays for the citizen, and they prevent overlapping with the DCB with DS. So if physicians use DCB, they are not allowed to put DS in.
Yeah.
So we are very wondering about wondering if there is any evidence that we can persuade our payer into reimbursing that.
Okay, that definitely puts the question into perspective, and thank you for that extra information.
Yeah, so some physicians who are willing to use DCB, no matter how they get after pre-dilatation, if the result is not satisfactory, they do the pre-dilatation again until they get the satisfactory result for DCB. So I think even though they draw these kind of things for academic purposes, it's very important for us to understand physicians' willingness to use which device. But in Korea, health economic-wise, we cannot easily use the same technology in a single patient.
Yes.
So I think if there's some kind of evidence answering Jade's questions, it would be very beneficial for Korea.
Yeah, if I'm understanding, even with that extra information, right now, I don't think the right thing to do is try and convince the market that they should be doing a drug-coated balloon, and if you don't get a satisfactory result, put a drug-eluting stent in. I don't think that's right. There's no science for that, and with the current meta-analysis information out there, I think, loading up more paclitaxel right now, it would make them feel uncomfortable. Now, do I really think there's a safety issue? No, I don't, but right now, I think that would be a tough call. But there is data out there for bare metal bailout stenting, and you guys still sell a Nova. So right now, I think the right thing to do is say, hey, you know, we've got a good drug-coated balloon, Ranger, with good results, and if you have to do a spot bailout stent, you know, we have data for that. Because in our own data, Ranger, Compare, we have a bailout stent rate. All right? So we do have bailout stenting in our own data for Ranger out to 2 years now. Okay, so yeah, I think that would be that would be it. The spot stenting. I'm not talking about a full line lesion, which is a different thing.
One more question.
Yeah.
The last year, say Simon, the ANG,
Yes.
you have expressed their concerns over limited length of Ranger. So how are they doing with this, limitation in AZ?
They've just launched Ranger long lengths. Yes, yeah. Yeah, they have. Yeah. So look, it is a bit of a limitation. If you're, I think you're in not a bad position, because you said that your reimbursement is about half of a drug-eluting stent. So, you know, if they have to use 2 drug-coated balloons, for a whole length of the lesion, that's reimbursed, right?
For SFA, 3 bursts up to 3.
Up to 3, yeah, which is fine. You've got lengths up to 100 mil. You know, the kind of 300 millimeter lesions are quite rare. You know, usually you're 200, 250, somewhere around there. So, yeah, look, I think you'll be okay. Covered with overlapping balloons at the moment. Yeah. I mean, it would always be ideal to have a full range, all these different things, but it comes at a cost. I don't think it'd be a big limiting factor. I think there's more benefit for you guys to be able to go into the physicians, the really top volume IRs, vascular surgeons, ICs, with a full range, Ranger, Illuvia, Innova, all these things, Mustang, Sterling, Victory Wire, Rubicon. You've got all of these tools to help them manage SFA, and there isn't another company in the Korean market that can offer what you can offer right now. From the 1st of March, when you launch Ranger, you will have the most complete range. Really, there's not a lot of reason for any other rep to be there in your case for SFA, right? And I think that's what you want to be focusing on, is really focusing on the fact that you really do have the most complete bag at the moment. You are really the most complete partner to that physician at the moment. Yeah. But it's important that you sell the appropriate technology at the appropriate time, and not try and, you know, find ways to kind of push more Illuvia in and stuff like that. That's not what it's about, remember? Patience, that's, yeah. Okay, we will move from the algorithm, and let's get into some product specs and information. I'm going to move past this and start here. I think it's up. Start with Sterling. Right? We get, yeah. You know, we keep thinking about Ranger as this new big product, but really the only thing new about Ranger is Transpax and paclitaxel. That's it, right? Bit of a loading tool. Other than that, we're selling Sterling, right? That's the base of the product. Like Innova was to Illuvia, Sterling to. And I think this is good, because Sterling over time has proven itself as a really reliable, fantastic 018 balloon. It performs well, it crosses well, it very rarely bursts. So it has a pretty good RVP, holds up in pretty tough lesions. It tracks very well. It's a pretty hard balloon to fault. Now, if you ask me about Mustang, I'd say it's okay, right? The design of it's good, but there's some things we could improve on Mustang. I think, you know, its deliverability, it's kind of tracking through lesions and stuff like that. I've had a couple of physicians say, it doesn't always get where I want it to go. But I've never had a physician ever say anything bad about Sterling to me. In the 6 or 7 years that I've been covering, you know, essentially have been covering core products, I've never heard anything bad about Sterling. It's a really, really good balloon. And it, you know, shouldn't be any surprise that this was the #1 balloon in the US. Right, market share wise, 018 balloon, Sterling #1. So, let's go there. So good crossing, right? That's important when we're tracking down. Not every physician is going to follow the algorithm. Some physicians, no doubt, will do their first inflation with the drug-coated balloon. Okay, hopefully most of them will follow the IFU and do vessel prep first, but not everyone will. So for those that don't, and you need to find out whether they are which camp they're in, vessel prep or just straight in with the drug-coated balloon. And maybe they'll even ask you, they might even say to you, hey, can I just do my pre-dilatation with the drug-coated balloon? Okay, some may ask that. So it's you know, it's a nice P-Bax balloon. It's nice and strong. Again, with the laser bonding, nice and strong. It deflates and withdraws nicely. I don't think that's too much of an issue for many balloons these days. It's scratch and puncture resistant. Now that is important when you've got particularly long calcified lesions. You need to know that your balloon's going to hold up in that environment, and Sterling is very well designed to hold up in that environment. It's fairly well kink resistant. I haven't seen many of those. And again, you know, these tack welds to improve pushability. Like I said, this balloon is just extremely well designed. In fact, I'd love for them to just make Sterling 035. It's that good, you know. Then we could, then we'd have some slightly better crossing characteristics and that sort of thing. So, so some things there just to remember, that you are giving them a reliable balloon that's proven itself in this environment before. That's the main point here. Any questions about? Does anyone want to challenge that? Challenge Sterling? This is the time to discuss this stuff. If anyone's not feeling comfortable, or they have had physicians that have said, I'm not that fond of Sterling, this is the time to bring it up, because your peers might have an answer for it. I don't have all the answers, so it might be something as we discuss as a group. So if there's any questions about Sterling, or you don't feel confident in Sterling, let's discuss that here.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Do you think is it okay to use Sterling monorail version to use SFA as a pre-dilatation? Because some of my doctors have been used for it, because in Korea we don't have enough OTW version. So
yeah,
we comparing, we have a lot of monorail.
So right now, I think the best way to answer that question is that way, right? If you've got a Rutherford 4 or less, so 432, they're generally a claudicant, right? So 2, 3 are activity claudicants, Rutherford 4 being a rest pain claudicant, right? Then in that situation, I think monorail's okay, because generally, okay, this is none of these are definitive rules, but generally they've got some sort of channel. They've just got some sort of restricted channel in their SFA that's causing them a bit of pain. Now, if you've got a channel, then generally you can work a wire through there, a support catheter, and a balloon. In that case, I think monorail, no worries, right? You can get it through. If you're talking about CLI, long CTO, then I've been told that monorail as the pushability is almost as good as over the wire, but I have a hard time sort of believing that. I don't know why. I've got no reason not to believe it, but I just don't. When you look at it, just from an engineering perspective, it doesn't look like it would have the push that an over the wire. So I would say, that's if you were a doctor asking me, I'd say, look, in your general claudication, in your rest pain claudicants that you're treating, then yeah, monorail is fine every day. But if you've got a long CTO, I'd be pulling an over the wire balloon for that. Yeah, you just got better chance of crossing, and the stakes are high here, right? The stakes are high if you don't get across. Yeah. So I wouldn't just put monorail on the shelf. Yeah, I'd have that.
Also, so in sales, increase or not after launching range in some countries.
Say that again, Joe.
I think we have been a good chance to use Sterling for the pre-ballooning.
Yes.
So in some country, I wonder, in some country, the sales of Sterling is increased or not?
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, that's a good question.
Some physicians, especially a cardiologist, prefer to use 004 and 018 wires to treat complicated SFA.
So I'm gonna. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to look it up. So pull through on Sterling. Yeah, that pull through effect, we call that pull through, right? It's the kind of flagship product's effect on the other products, we call that pull through. So I'll try and find out if there's been any pull through effect. Australia would be a good one for that because we had quite a sort of a moderate balloon share. 035, 018 and 014 with Coyote, just because Abbott just own that market in Australia with Armada and Fox and stuff. So I will, I'll look it up. I've got the data there. I'll look it up and see if there has been any kind of pull-through effect. I know their balloons have been growing. I'll be interested to see where it is, so I'll have a look for you. It's a good question.
On the other hand, this our one of challenge. In Korean market, SFA, for our market is major is 435 system. Right. So yeah, it's kind of a pro and cons,
Yeah, so let's hold that question because it's a fantastic question. I think when we get into a good discussion, we really need to challenge this concept. So 035. That's the majority platform. Is that right?
Yes, right.
Platform for SFA. Yeah?
Yes.
I think there's a very important aspect that we should cover. Yeah. It's a very important piece of the market that we should talk about. Okay, so this is a deck that I took from Australia that they used for a bit of their training. It's the in-service deck. We do have some training modules on drug-coated balloons that cover paclitaxel mechanism of action, that cover treatments, chemical kind of makeups of excipients and treatment algorithms and all that sort of thing. They're a Brainshark module, and I'll send you the links to those if you want to do them. They are a little bit outdated because they were done a little while ago. They were actually done by Tom Coles. Don't know if any of you remember Tom. He was one of our international PI trainers from Big Tom. Yeah, Big Tom, that's right. So those exist still, but that was some time ago. But I quite like this because this is the presentation potentially that you would give to the hospitals if you're introducing Ranger to the hospitals with the physicians and nurses. This is the in-service. So I thought this is a good thing that we can go over. It covers most of what we want to cover in terms of technical aspects of the device itself, as well as some of the other kind of treatment and tuning kind of options we made, decisions we made. So let's get into that. So this slide here, finale. I watched a video recently that said this slide here was almost a bit of a cliche, which means, you know, it's been put up that many times. But it hasn't been disproven, and I think a lot of physicians identify with this when thinking about using a drug-coated balloon to treat. Okay? They don't just think about the length of the lesion anymore. Okay, so they don't just think about the length, right? All right, so we've got equals our length. Right, that used to be how we judged complexity, wasn't it, of a lesion. We say, well, it was a 7 centimetre or it was a 180 millimetre, like an 18 centimetre lesion. The 18 centimetre lesion is the complex one, and the 7 centimetre one is the simple one. Does that seem about right? Yeah, when you're talking to your doctors? Yeah. But because of the way drug-coated devices work, they had to start to consider, well, what about the actual burden of plaque and calcium in the vessel itself, and how does that impact the actual drug getting into the layer of vessel that it needs to get into to stop the restenosis or slow down the restenosis. Okay, so who can tell me